Okay guys, so what we're going to do today is this little animation. First of all, you must have the timeline open down here. One quick and easy way to do it is to go under Window. Oops, sorry, I need to activate Photoshop. I'm in the QuickTime interface right now. Activate Photoshop, Window, Workspace, Motion. Window, Workspace, Motion. I have talked to you in the past on how you can actually create, switch between different workspaces to go into the default is Essentials, but you can go into painting if you want to do more like conceptual art. You can go into photography if you're doing color correcting. You can go into typography, and all it changes is the palettes on the sides. Basically, Photoshop changes palettes for you so that you have the palettes that are needed for that particular task. So does everybody have the timeline open down here? So what we're going to do today, raise your hand if you don't, and I'll stop, obviously. Okay, guys? Even if I don't ask you the question, raise your hand, and I will be happy to wait for you or help you out. What we're going to do today is we're going to create what we call frame-by-frame animation. So I don't know if when you were a child, just like me, you created flip books. That means you took a sheet, and I was a big diver that loved to do flips and stuff. So I would draw myself like this in the first sheet, and then the second sheet I would bend my knees, third I would bend again, and then the fifth sheet I would start rising, and then sixth sheet I would rise again, and eventually I would be diving as soon as you flip the little book. So that's what we're doing in a digital format. So how do we create new sheets? I simply go down here and click. But before I click, I want to look into the layers. Into the layers, I have a background, I have a tar pit and text, and then I have a tar pit normal state and a tar pit sunken state. So we're going to create a little animation in which my tar pit is coming up and then sinking back down. So I want you to have only the background and the tar pit and text layers active or visible, sorry. Remember, whatever you do, whenever you do an animation, you want to have all your layers already there, planned out. So you need to plan it first, create the layers, then go in the timeline and create all the frames. The reason why is if you forgot a layer and you created, let's say, 18 frames, all with different content, in the minute in which you add a layer, then that layer will show up in all the different frames, and that's a problem because then you have to go 18 times and turn that layer off. Is that clear that whenever you create an animation, you got to plan ahead, have all your layers ready to go, then you finally can start creating frames. How do you create a frame? Just like you create a new layer. You click on this little icon down here, and that's a new frame, and I'm going to activate the make visible, the layer called sunken state, because my tar pit is coming out from the mud, from the tar. Then I'm going to create another frame, and I'm going to actually turn off sunken state and turn on normal state. How do I do it? I create a frame by clicking on here, and then I go in the layers. Like right now, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to click on the frame, then I'm going to go in the layer and say, hey, I want a sunken state to be visible this time. So I simply create a new frame by using the same icon you used to create a new layer, and then I go into my layer palette and turn visible or invisible the layer I want to see. So right now, for example, even without doing anything else, if I hit the play button down here, my tar pit goes up and down. That's a little animation. Now, if you wanted to not go that fast, you would hold the Shift key and select all your frames. And you see where it says 0 second underneath? You want to hold on to that and choose a 0.2, for example. You guys see that? So now when I play my animation, it's actually going slower. So my tar pit goes up and down, and as it should. And this is frame-by-frame animation. Remember, if you wanted to copy, for example, to do something, you copy, instead of having this frame there, let's say you didn't have it, and you knew that you already have it here, you could actually go select that frame, go under this option and say copy frame, then select the very last frame and do paste, and paste it after that last frame. So when you say paste frame, it will tell you where do you want to paste it, and I'm going to say paste it after selection. So when I say OK now, my frame is there. So remember, through this option, you can copy frames, paste frame, reverse frame. Sometimes you might copy them and then you want to kind of flip them so they're in the reverse order. So you have quite a bit of power. As usual, in Photoshop palettes, you always have this options box that gives you a lot of power. So this is frame by frame animation. Let's do a little tween animation. So if you open the file called Photos PSD, right here, tween animation implies that you have a start point and an end point, and you make the computer do all the in-between. That's why it's called tween animation. In this file, you'll see you have three images: cafe, T-ball, and coffee. They are photographic images, so by nature of it, they would want to be optimized as a JPEG. We don't optimize, we don't make a JPEG animation. Why? Because you actually know that JPEG does not support animation. Only GIF supports transparency and animation, right? So if I want to make a slideshow of photographic images and I still want it somehow exported as a GIF, that I'll show you how to do next, obviously, I want to make sure that the images have the least amount of color, and that's why I made duotones. And if you notice, they're a little bit grainy. They're kind of on purpose done, like treated in such a way that they would work well with optimizing them as GIFs. So I'm going to create another frame right now, and I'm going to make T-ball visible. And now I'm going to make another frame. It's the same process over and over again. You create a frame, and then you make whatever you want visible on that frame, just like I did with the tar pit. So it's a dance between the timeline palette in which you create a new frame and the layer palette in which you turn layers visible or invisible depending on your needs. How do I do the tween now? You select the image that you want to tween, and I want to make a tween between the first and the second image. So I go to the second image and I click on this little icon down here that looks like little dots pretty much. Little dots. I'm going to click. And it's going to tell me, do you want to tween with the next frame and add 5 new frames in between? I don't want to tween with the next frame. I want to tween with the prior frame. So I'm going to say previous frame, and I want to tween everything, the opacity, everything, position, yes.
What does tween mean?
Tween, as I explained at the very beginning, means you start and end in Photoshop. You give it a start and an end. Tween creates all the in-betweens. That means the transition in between, the in-between frames. Let me say OK, and you'll see it. OK, look up. Look at my screen. If I hit OK now, you see that it says 5 frames with a prior frame. And when I hit OK, you'll see that it created these frames that are from 2 to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These frames are brand new, just created. And what do? They make that transition between the first frame and the second frame. So they turn the first frame opacity down to 0, and they make the second frame go opacity down to 100. I do the same exact thing with the third one. I'm going to create the tween. Does everybody get it what the tween is now? The fact that you have a beginning and an end point, and the computer does the in-between parts. I'm going to click again, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. So now, if we play this, and I'm going to actually give it, instead of 0 seconds, I'm going to select them with the Shift key and say that I want 0.2, so it's not too fast. And then I'm going to hit the play button, and I have a very nice slideshow. Maybe it's moving a little bit too fast still, but also what I have missing in this slideshow, though, is the in-between between the last frame and the first one. It does a big jump between this one and this one. That is not good. So I'm going to go to the last frame, click again on the tween button, and again, instead of previous frame, I'm going to say first frame. So now I have the in-between with the first frame as well. So it is a pretty straightforward process as long as you set up the frames initially with the right content visible through the layer palette, and then you click this button to create all the in-betweens. I'm going to make it a little bit longer than 0.5. Another thing I forgot to tell you guys is that you can decide you want to play forever, or you can decide you want to play only once or 3 times, or you can hit other and say how many times you want it to play. I'm going to say once for now. And now I want to show you, after I play this, how do I make it into something that I put online, a web piece, animated GIFs, basically. So as you can see, plays pretty nicely. I'm going to hit the stop button right now. Oops, sorry, right here. And then I'm going to do File, Save for Web, as I did yesterday or last class, sorry. And I'm going to say I want it to be a GIF. I want to be selective. I want to have maybe 32 or 64 colors. You see, it's kind of big, though. It's 428K. It's not, not ideal, I have to say. It means it kind of gets the file size quite a bit bigger that you have to be aware of, because it'll take longer to upload as well as to play online. But you can do it. I don't think photos are the ideal for animated GIFs, but you can do it. And then when I say save, just like I saw last class, I have the option if you want to save it as HTML and images, or you want to save it as an image only. Let's say image only, and it's going to be called photo.gif, and I'm going to put it on the desktop, for example. Or let's put in that Sarah's website so it's easier to find. It's inside a folder. So now if I go in my Sarah's site, guys, that is right here, I bet it put it right here. And if I drag this onto a browser, let's say Chrome, you'll see that I have a little image with my slideshow. So that's how you create an animated GIF and how you upload it on the web. One last piece of information is, what if you want to create motion? So if I want to create, I'm going to create a brand new document, and I say, hey, I want a ball that moves from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to create my little ball. Obviously, it has to be on a separate layer. So I'm going to create the ball. I'm going to create a separate layer because I have to be able to move it. If it's with the background, it's going to be a problem. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to choose the color. I'm going to choose a nice loud red color. I'm going to say Edit Fill. I want to show you something, guys, that happened when we went back in here. This is what happened. The timeline is showing me two options, because Photoshop lately, in the latest two releases, has actually video as an option as well, and video uses the timeline or frame animation. You definitely want to choose frame animation, and you want to click on it, and it goes into this state. If you obviously have a bunch of footage and you want it into a video, you do the other option. But that's how you need to do if it happens that you don't have it. You can switch through this button. By the way, in the prior versions of Photoshop is on this side of the timeline palette. But this button allows you to switch to video or back to animation. So if I want to move this ball, all I have to do is create a new frame, grab the Move tool, and move it to the other side of the screen. And if you notice, if I click on the first frame, the ball is there. If you click on the second frame, the ball is here. And obviously, if I want in between, I just click and say I want, 5 in between. And now whenever I play my animation, my ball is moving. So if you want to do I showed you earlier how to just turn layers visible and invisible, how you can create the in-between once you do that layers invisible and visible, or you can decide if you want to do motion and, for example, move text around, move objects around, create different effects. You can simply do it directly like this, just by using the Move tool, pretty much. So that's another way to do it. This is pretty much all the various techniques you can use in terms of creating an animation. And now I'm going to ask for questions, obviously, so we make sure that everything is clear.